Well, greetings. Your existential reality versus your psychological drama. Well, if everyone were paying attention to life, there would not be any need for people to either agree or disagree with each other because they would see things the way things are, which is how life is. However, instead of adhering to the existential reality, people tend to confuse things with their psychological drama. Your existential reality is something that never changes. Reality never changes. The reality is that you come with the boundaries of space and time. Your lifespan, which is an average of 3 score and 10, is your boundary of time, and your height and shoulder width is your boundary demarcating the space you occupy. You cannot grow beyond boundaries. Reality never changes. So your existential reality is what's real about you. Using your instinct is not the same as intuition. What is real about you is that you have a lifespan. What is real about you is that you're bound by space. What is real about you is that one day you're going to die. Everything in the physical universe is cyclical. It comes with boundaries and it has a shelf life. So using your instinct is not the same as intuition. Intuition has to do with basic survival and is a dimension of your physical perception. The other creatures also use instinct. It is driven from their reptilian brain. On the other hand, intuition is a computing method juxtaposed with logic. Every individual has a masculine logical side known as the pingala, which works with the sun, and a feminine intuitive side that works with the moon. So with logic, you go through the series of steps to derive at your answer. However, with intuition, it is not guesswork. It's, you just know. Even though you may skip a few steps, you will get the right answer. So intuition is not guessing. There are ways to increase your level of perception, such as through meditation. When you quietly listen, you're not there like your God's advisor. Prayer is good for adoration and for making supplication, but but you're not God's counselor. So you should, or advisor. So your perception grows when you listen, when you meditate it. So meditation again is not an act, but it is a way of being. So I remain meditative by having established a consecrated space within myself where I remain meditative 24/7. Your thought and emotion, well, notwithstanding, you may give a whole lot of credence to your thoughts and emotions because they can change, they're not real. Similarly, the makeup that you may be wearing, you can alter your personality, alter your character. So they are not real. If you can, anything that you can change is not real. Reality never changes. If you choose to either be an optimist or pessimist, that's psychological. That's your choice. However, God is real, life is real, and so why not rather be a realist? Where God doesn't have a character. God doesn't have a personality. You know what God is? A presence, a very powerful presence. There's no, you don't really need, you can have several personalities. You don't really need a character. You don't really need, what you need is to be a powerful presence. If the color of the room is white, you become that, and only make interventions that are timely and interventions that make a difference. Yeah? So, where, whereas you may use psychology on others, you should never psych yourself. Otherwise, how are you going to be able to sit at ease and stillness? You should neither look up to anyone nor down on anyone. Rather see people for who they are. See through a plain mirror. And in so doing, you are seeing them and the way you should see yourself with clarity. Truth and reality is what comes naturally. If you have to invent these, then they are either lies or stories. Truth and reality are related in that truth is something you can only come to realize. Not something you read in a book or hear from an authority figure. So since reality never changes, whenever you go, wow, now I got it, that's when you realize that which is truth and reality. Your interaction with other people. Well, whenever you look up to someone, you're overcompensating and thereby you don't see that person's truth and reality. On the other hand, when you look down on another, you're forming a conclusion, like writing that person out. When as long as a person lives, there's always the awesome possibility that she be transformed into becoming the very best version of him or herself. So to be indiscriminate and impartial is the way God is, and that's the way you ought to be. There are no good people and bad people per se. There are only people. Given a pleasant environment wherein people are happy, they comport themselves and call it a success. However, that's what people call a success, a pleasant environment. However, in an unpleasant environment, anyone driven by compulsion, compulsive thought and behavior, can lose their character, lose their composure. You know, all thoughts, emotions, and experiences are driven from within a person. They don't come, experiences don't come from the environment. Don't be there trying to squeeze pleasure out of the environment. You've got to consciously create pleasantness within yourself. In making your body pleasant, you enjoy good health as well as pleasure. In making your energies pleasant, you become blissful and ecstatic. In making your thoughts pleasant, you remain peaceful and joyful. And in making your emotions pleasant, you experience love and compassion. You become compassionate. The world is not obliged to be the way you want it to be. The way it is the way it is. God only created one universe. Organized religion is what is dividing the world into good and bad, good versus evil. God is one who created everything good. People go around comparing themselves, calling themselves good, only to refer to others as bad. One out of convenience, they call the tree firewood, the earth dirt, and they scoff at this God created universe in their so-called want of a better place. Except whoever seriously believes that ought to hurry up and die, because you've got to die to attend, to enter. Everything in this physical realm is temporal. Your material body and mind will one day return to the dust. It is only while you are alive in this physical created universe and body that you have discretionary memory, and are able to make choices. Once you're dead, you lose the ability to make any choice at all. And the only memory you will carry when you're dead is the last. Whether you died willingly, joyfully, and peacefully, as opposed to dying violently and prematurely, which is often a problem, for the deceased transitory process and body, making it difficult to go from the physical state to the realm of the spirit, which is nothingness. For the realm of the spirit is where there are no boundaries, right? And being in transit, you want the person to be able to rest in peace. Where there is a problem, resting in peace is what causes some people to see ghosts, the deceased relatives remaining behind, because they're there sometimes not properly disposing of the dead person's clothing. They keep it and wear it and things of that sort. As well, they keep the ashes of the deceased in the house. So instead of looking down God's created universe, you should be living your life with full intensity, for life is the only thing that you have. You come with nothing, will leave with nothing. Therefore, everything that you have puts you on the profit side. Live a life wherein you are consciously creating memorable experiences. As long as your mental acuity remains intact, you should only become full-fledged whenever you are dead. You cannot afford to be apprehensive. You can ill afford to procrastinate. You should be living today as if though it were going to be your last day. Neither does living with full intensity on the outside and the inside mean that you be tense. nor does being relaxed on the outside mean that you be laxed. The only thing you have, my friend, is energy. You don't have time. Time is on a steady 24-hour rotation. Nowadays, there is a concept referred to as stress management. In the old days, grandma used to say, when you go to her and say, Grandma, I'm tired, and so on, she'd tell you, you need to cut down, as if those stress comes from the environment. No, stress does not come from the environment. People create it upon themselves. If you were carrying a calf when it was only 50 pounds, you'd still be carrying it when it becomes 250 pounds. The difference would be that the additional weight would cause you to become stronger. It is never the load, it's the way a person carries it. Therefore, learn how to carry the load instead of stressing the load. Whenever a person finds his or her niche, something in which she is competent at doing and loves doing, she doesn't know where the time goes. The entire 8.3 billion populating the earth are God breed. You know, yet there are people going around calling themselves children of God, while they refer to other people as heathen. An objective mind places one thing as more important than the other. And so an objective mind is discriminatory. People are individuals, and as such they are indivisible. No two people are alike. An example is to identify, of discriminating, is to identify one person as pretty and the other as ugly, or to identify one person as smart and the other as unintelligent. You know, look, an objective mind, why? 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 People are individuals. They should be becoming the best version of themselves, not trying to live up to a gold standard, you know, so-called become like the Joneses. Living by comparison is a terrible way to live. In the first place, you can only make a comparison after you've come, something has come into your perception. When my generation was growing up, you know, and we were manually carrying water from the river and sand from the beach, we did not perceive either of those chores as hard work. You know, until a stranger came along, you know, with a mule and cart. That's when we had something to compare that what we were doing with. So to live your life in comparison to your neighbor, such as to have a bigger television or, you know, have a latest model and more expensive automobile, is a terrible way to live. If I had the luxury of time, I would make it my business to learn about every individual on among the entire 8.3 billion populating the world, because each one is different. No two people are alike. And whenever I sit with an individual, which is how I practice, I erase the chalkboard of my memory and only observe who is in front of me. Give them my undivided attention. Become totally consumed with that individual while spending time with them as if though they're the most important person at the moment, which they are. Yeah? I wouldn't be there either looking at my watch or having my mind in any other place. I'd be there to learn everything that there is to learn about the individual without forming any conclusion. Because when you form a conclusion, you're writing people off. And as long as the person lives, there's always the awesome possibility that she transforms into becoming the very best version of himself or herself. Therefore, let it be so. Ito Allah, kaya sisaya. Ayo.